welcome to our very first episode, sort of, of 3PN. We are Pixels, Plots, and Parenting. We are your hosts, Jake and Shain. Anybody who has listened to our very rough Ahsoka series, this is what we've been talking about. This is our main or flagship show, however you want to call it. I just want to go through a quick intro of like what we plan this show to be, or this podcast, however you're consuming it, either video or audio. But we're just going to get together and bullshit about games, TV, movies, books, whatever, nerdy shit, and family life, and how to navigate that, keeping a balance between all of it, and being dads, and really just a chance for us to get together and catch up and bullshit. So, if you don't mind putting up with that and probably dealing with our long tangents and going off on, I don't know, weird, unnecessary topics, then stick around. Shane, you got anything to add to that?
No, not really. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Yeah, I think you already talked about, if you've watched our Ahsoka beginnings, we've, I think, improved a lot. And that's what that whole, I guess, program was designed for. We wanted to post something, but we also wanted it to be like an intro to how we're actually going to do everything.
Right.
So.
Well, I think it was important for us to just get something out there, just to do something, because if you just start with an idea like, hey, we want to do this podcast, whatever, and a lot of times I think you can, say something like that and it just never happens. So I think it was just pushing to just do something.
Well, I'm going to be honest, I didn't think this was going to happen, I think it was at your wedding, and you're like, hey, are you interested in doing a podcast? And I was like, yeah, sure. In my head, like, okay, this is not going to happen.
Yeah. But well, it seems like everybody and their brother is doing one now. But I think it was more, at least more for me. It was just like, I've been on the road since like 2019, 2018. And you've been gone in the military since, what, 2012? Something like that?
Yeah. I've been in for 12 years since January. No, in June it'll be 12 years.
Really?
Yeah.
So honestly, it's just a good time to get together, and we don't get to do this anymore, and if we can record it and maybe entertain some people along the way, great. If not, whatever. It's still fun for me. So
yeah, and I know, like, because I've rewatched most of the stuff that you posted for Ahsoka, like, I don't want to toot our own horn, but it's been pretty funny. So
I enjoy it. Yeah,
it's fun to do, and I get a couple of chuckles out of it. The like 1.5 friends that I have out here that have decided to watch an episode or two have told me that they got a few chuckles out of it. So, and I think that's kind of what this is about. It's a way for us as long distance and long time friends to stay in touch, but also bring a little bit of entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So it's just for people who don't know us, I imagine people just starting off on the first couple episodes just going to be friends and family anyway, which good luck with that. But just quick introductions. My name's Jake. I work in the construction industry. I've been playing video games since I was, too young to remember my age. You know what I mean? I love all kinds of nerdy shit. That's pretty much why we're doing this, right? We just like talking about it. I think I guess you talk about those like core memories of things that really got you into this stuff in the first place, like Halo. When that first Halo game came out and having like LAN parties with your friends,
oh my God.
that kind of stuff just sticks with you. It gets you hooked, right? That's really it for me. I'm sure as episodes go on, we'll talk a little bit more about ourselves, but I don't want to spend too much time on it, at least this first episode. So, Shane, why don't you give you a quick little intro?
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm Paul. and so I've been
I'm
playing
gonna
video
call you Paul
games.
from now on. I hope you know that.
I am getting over a bit of a throat cold, so bear with me. But yeah, same as Jake. I've been playing video games since I can remember, and it definitely wasn't one of my first video games ever. But one of the biggest video games ever that I had played was also Halo, and I just remember like we'd have we had like this mostly finished basement at the time because when Halo came out, we had just moved to White House where Jake and I met and sort of grew up together, and so we wanted to have like this big, huge LAN party, and my dad was able to rig all of the wiring and everything through the rafters, and then like down centrally, and we just had a bunch of like TV screens in a circle around it. And it, I don't know if any of you guys have seen The Matrix, but it reminds me of that room where they jack into the Matrix, and there's just a circle of the
The
screens
screens,
pointing
yeah.
outwards, and that was just us. We set up a bunch of furniture with our consoles and everything, and we played. I don't even remember what the different game modes were, but we just started fragging each other in Halo for hours and hours.
Yeah.
But
I remember. I think the first video game system I ever had was the N64, and I want to say at the time my dad either got it or bought it off of one of his buddies. I don't even really remember, but I remember the first game I was playing was that Star Wars. It was a Star Wars game. It was like X-wing something, Squadron. I don't even know. I just remember like this pixelated, like I don't even know, the ship, and you're like you're flying around the big what is it, the AT-ATs, and you have that rope. You're trying to like trip them up and whatever. I don't know if you remember this game, but I remember we
yeah,
spent hours and hours playing this game, and ever since then I've been hooked. And my mother hated video games, still does. All right, well, let's get into what we actually came here to talk about. First thing I think we wanted to kind of bullshit about is we'll get into some video games. So I guess we'll start like what are we playing? What systems we play on? Shane, why don't you go ahead and start?
well, I know for a while, you and I were playing Baldur's Gate 3 together, and that was pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
But both of us have sort of like video game ADD, so I do think that, and if anyone else thinks that that'd be cool to watch, we should like start a new campaign that we live stream, or
That'd be
maybe
fun.
not live stream, but stream and then post it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, so that was a really awesome game. I feel like it's the first time that they really truly did D&D right in a video game format. Normally, like they got some MMOs out there that are like okay,
Yeah.
but there's just, and I'm an avid D&D player. There is just an itch that video games do not scratch, whereas Baldur's Gate 3, um, kind of definitely like
It really
got it.
was a fantastic, like really well put together game with so much content and it didn't it the thing I was afraid of with that game is that not playing with friends would kind of lessen the experience. And I will say it is a lot more fun playing with friends, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just as fun playing a single player playthrough too. So it
Yeah,
wasn't exclusive to both. Like that game we've been playing, Skull and Bones, right?
yeah.
That game is not as fun by yourself. Like I don't
It's
even play it by myself. If you play
I'm
it
gonna
with
be
your
real
friends,
honest. It's not even that good of a game,
it's not. It was
especially
just
for how it
fun
was hyped
playing with
up.
people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But that's definitely not one of those games. I mean, I haven't even made it to chapter 2 of Baldur's Gate because
Act
I
Two. Yeah,
or Act 2, whatever, because I keep fucking around making a new character and just
yep,
playing with different things, and I just keep playing through, and then I'll whatever. I mean, it's so great. I do want to sit down and actually play through the whole thing
yeah.
because I do want to be able to beat it.
I've got 4 or 5 campaigns going, and that includes campaigns that I'm playing with other people. Um, Only one of them has made it to Act 3. All of the rest are still in Act 1. So
Yeah, ours is still in Act 1, isn't it?
yeah, We're
Yeah.
close. We're close to getting Act 2.
All right.
Yep.
Well, we got to talk about what's really hot in the video game world right now, and that is Helldivers 2.
You
You
mean
can't go.
Deep Rock Galactic.
That's exactly. Helldivers 2, you can't go anywhere right now without seeing something about it, about the petitions to get the Xbox players on, um, the new mechs that got dropped. Apparently, I don't know if you saw the news about that.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people are complaining that the mechs aren't powerful enough, and so
I
they
heard,
want to
yeah. So
buff
I
them.
actually, I heard I think it was IGN posted this about how the mechs are really just like a glass armor suit,
Yeah.
you know. Um, but yeah, so full disclosure, I don't think either of us have really played. I downloaded Helldivers on PC. I think we are both mainly Xbox players.
Yeah.
I own a PlayStation 4 and I have a PC, a gaming PC. But I don't know. Xbox is just more comfortable for me. It's what I grew up with. It's what I like playing. The controller's the best in the market. I'm sorry, PlayStation, but it is. I think even if you're a PlayStation player, the DualShock's got nothing on the Xbox controller. There's a reason PC uses the Xbox controller.
Yep.
Um, Now, that's not to say anything bad about the PlayStation. I mean, as far as console wars go, I could really give a shit. I think they're both good in different aspects. But um, Helldivers, I played two two missions like by myself, and that's not the way to do it. Turns
No.
out, you need a group to play with, or else you are going to be absolutely smashed. It is a great game from what I've seen so far. It's a really cool idea.
Did you
I
know that there's like this dude, it's a singular dude, and he controls like the opposition, like the mechs and the bugs.
his name's Joel,
Yeah.
and they keep posting like memes and pictures of Joel from The Last of Us. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen that. Okay,
No, I
so
haven't.
they keep posting pictures of that and saying that's Joel, that's the guy in charge or whatever. I don't know. What a job that would be.
I heard he'll
That's
like
the
just
dream job.
he'll just wake up in the middle of the night and be like, the players are winning too much on this singular planet, and
Yeah.
so he'll just reinforce like the bugs or the robots,
Yep.
and take over half the planet overnight, and then the players wake up and they're like, wait a minute, we just conquered all this stuff. What happened?
Yeah. I cannot wait to get into that game a little more. I think it's going to be a cold day in hell before Sony ever lets Microsoft into that
Yeah,
because it is
it's
a
not gonna.
Sony published game. It's never going to happen.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
not gonna
they keep
happen.
saying wishful thinking. They have petitions, whatever. But honestly, I don't think that's going to do shit. It would be great. I think they should.
I mean,
I
if
think
they
it would
did,
be
I'd get right on
fantastic.
it.
Oh, me
Yeah,
too.
I I did download it on my. I've got like a really old gaming laptop, and that's what I'm using to do this.
Yeah.
And I know that my laptop is good enough to run the beta Baldur's Gate 3 on like lower to mid range specs, but I need to look up like what the minimums are of Helldivers and what the max that this laptop can do. So I've downloaded it. I tried booting it up the other day, but I mean, this laptop also has its own little hiccups and stuff. So I don't
Right.
know if it was an issue with my laptop just having one of those things, or if it truly just doesn't have the power to run the game.
I think that would be a fun one to jump on with me,
Yeah.
you. I think it's only you can do a party of 4
Yep.
and stream something like that. That'd be fun.
That would be fun.
It is extremely difficult. I think. At least, I mean, I jumped on by myself, so that take that with a grain of salt. But it was a lot of fun, but and you can play with your Xbox controller. So I
Yeah.
hooked that up because I'm not a huge fan. I can do mouse and keyboard. I'm just not a huge fan. I'm not super comfortable with it. I can do it, but I'm not the best at it.
My
So I
fingers get
prefer.
confused when I try to do mouse and
Me
keyboard.
too. Me too. I don't know. I'm just not built for it. I like the Xbox controller, but yeah, that'd be fun to get on and play something like that. I think that's one of those games that's scratching that itch that people have been
Yeah.
missing. You can't really put your finger on it of like what we've been missing until it comes out. But that's
Mm-hmm.
definitely another one, like kind of like Baldur's Gate. This is one of those, which is it's funny that it's not these massive multiplayer games that you would think of. It is a massive multiplayer game, but you're only playing in squads of 4 people.
Well, see,
You
that's
know,
the thing, right? Is up until recently, your options have been these AAA games that have sort of um, discovered or broken the algorithm of what it is that gets players hooked, and
right?
so they've realized that they can spend minimum money by just selling just the exact same game with a new skin over and over and over and over. So like Call of Duty used to scratch that itch,
Yeah.
but once you've played the same game
Once it's
10
37
years
copies of the
straight,
same game,
yeah, it's like, so you want me to pay you another $60 or $70, whatever it costs
yeah,
now,
shit's not cheap.
to just buy
I need a cough
like
button for you.
this, yeah, to buy like the same game that I bought last year.
Yeah.
They even use the same voice actors half the time. It's literally just the same dudes with a different skin. I even saw, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, but it was either from Modern Warfare 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, and it showed a side by side shot of one of the scenes, and it was the exact same scene. It's just it was just like literally like digitally
Reskinned.
repainted or reskinned,
Yeah.
but it was frame for frame, shot for shot, the exact
Well,
same
unfortunately, everything's
same
just
scene.
about money now, which, from a business perspective, I guess I
Yeah,
understand. But
but that's
yeah,
that's sort of the beauty of what's going on now is we've got
hmm
these more or less indie companies that are like, all right, we know what gamers really want, and they don't want that same shit that they've been playing for 10, 12, 15 plus years straight.
but shit, look what happened to Battlefield, and I think Battlefield's better than Call of Duty, if you ask me. However,
Yeah, you've always been into
lately,
Battlefield.
I don't know, I love it. But once they started switching it up too much, because you can go the opposite way. I think
Yeah.
that there's a way to keep giving your fans what they want without completely redoing a game as well.
Yeah.
So it's
That's a
definitely
that's
it's
a
not
hard code to crack. There's
it is it's not I'm
very
not
few
saying it's
developers
easy.
that
I'm
have
not a
figured that out.
yeah, it's like we're not game developers or whatever. I mean, I get it. It's not easy,
I
but I
I
don't know. You got to
think
do something.
I think a good example of someone who did it right was the original like Gears of War series. We can talk all we want about after the initial franchise ended and then they restarted it, but
Right.
that initial what like 4 or 5 games was really good.
Oh, absolutely.
Another one that did a great job was why can't I think of the name of it? You play this dude named Shepard, and he's trying to stop like these
Oh,
overpowered
Mass
aliens.
Effect.
Mass Effect, yeah, that's it. They did a
Although
great
that got a
Mass Effect.
lot of hate at
Well, no,
Andromeda.
Andromeda did. 1, 2, and 3 though were like perfect stepping stones off of each other,
Yeah, I
where
agree.
they changed just enough to make the game still interesting, but you were still playing like that same story that you're invested in. I think,
So,
and I don't think Andromeda was a bad game. I'm one of the few that actually enjoyed it, but I
yeah, I mean, it
understand
was
the
all right.
hate, and I understand that like it really should have just been its own standalone game, and they shouldn't have tried to tie it to the lore of Mass Effect.
I hope this doesn't make us go off on this like long tangent, but Starfield, I, man, what a disappointment. I think that's I don't know, maybe that's the hot take that people don't agree with, but when you talk about Mass Effect, that's how many years old now, right? And
Yeah.
that was like the perfect, especially at the time. But even now, I would go back and play it if I had the time. But that was the perfect like
I did a
space
couple years ago.
exploration. Yeah, no, it's great. That's like the
Yeah.
perfect space exploration with still you have the character relationships. You have all of that, and I think a lot of people expected Starfield to be a successor to that Mass Effect kind of framework, but with more of the God, I'm going to forget the name of that game. What was that space game that came out and it dropped and they got like sued for not being what they advertised and all that?
Oh, No Man's Sky.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of people thought this was going to be. Starfield was going to be Mass Effect and No Man's Sky had a baby, and
So
it was neither.
what a lot of people, at least in my circle, were thinking was that it's going to essentially be like Fallout, or more people were saying it's going to be Skyrim in space or Elder Scrolls in space. And
Yeah,
what it
that's
turned
another.
into
Yeah,
being was Fallout 4 in space,
yeah.
but instead of taking, and I like Fallout 4, it
Mm-hmm.
I was never able to play the other Fallout games, so Fallout 4 is the only one I played. I know the tried and true long term fans hated, or maybe not hated, but really didn't like Fallout 4. I liked it. It was my first step into the Fallout world. I
Couldn't
enjoyed
get
it.
into any of them.
But Starfield essentially took all of the worst parts of Fallout 4 and then ignored the good parts and then put it in space. It was like, I don't like, shipbuilding was cool, but they like overcomplicated it and then made it not
Yep.
make sense. And the settlement system is dumb. It's
I
not
never
even
even used it.
it's not a necessary. The only I built a single settlement so that I could have a place to gather resources so that I could build ships from scratch.
Yeah.
That was it. I had like one or
The
two people
biggest
there.
mistake they made was not, and this is, again, my opinion, but if you've ever played No Man's Sky, all right, you have full control of that ship and you take off, you fly wherever the hell you want through the atmosphere, whatever. That was, I think, the biggest. If they would have just added that part of it,
It would have been something.
it would have been a much better game. They also didn't have vehicles. Like if you look at Mass Effect, you had that little ground vehicle. You
Yep.
could get around easier. They didn't have that. They had a jetpack that didn't
Supposedly,
work worth a shit.
yeah. Supposedly they're working on an update that is going to add ground vehicles,
I've
but
been hearing that since they came out.
that's
I
true.
mean, maybe they will. I don't. I think they have. I'm not saying I'm never going to go back and replay it, but I think they disappointed the fans enough that they're never going to recover
What I
that
think they
fan
should
base.
do, instead of fixing this flop of a game, I think they should figure out how to logically create a sequel and just make the sequel what the original should have been.
Yeah, yeah, I could get behind that for sure. I'd definitely play
Mm-hmm.
that.
Because
Um,
the concept of the game is awesome. Um,
it
and
absolutely is.
there are aspects of the game that are really cool.
Yep.
And like the little faction wars and everything going on is pretty neat. It could have been a little more in depth. It was kind of very stick the square block into the square hole, and other than like one or two things, your decisions didn't really matter.
Well, and
So
the planet creation, which I know it's a lot of work. I think it was all procedurally generated, but that needs a lot of work. The planets were more or less just barren.
yeah,
There was
you'd
nothing
have
there.
like you'd have maybe three or four at most
Yeah,
different like species of animals. Half of them would be hostile,
yeah,
and they added in this weird little like biology scan quest where you'd scan the
yeah.
different
Which
fauna
pissed
and
me off. I hate
creatures and
doing that
stuff.
shit.
Yeah, it really the only thing that it served, to my knowledge, was to like make 100%ers happy, because
Yeah,
in
exactly.
order to 100% of the game, you had to scan every animal and fauna on every
Yep.
planet,
I don't want
and
to do that. I don't want to do
yeah,
any of that.
that's just dumb. Like
And
that.
maybe some people do. Maybe maybe there's a whole, I don't know, section of fans for that game that's what they like doing. They like 100% and they like going out and scanning every. But that's not what makes a good video game.
No,
If
I
you
want to be
have
a
that as like the very far for the 100%ers that they want to do things like that, and great, but don't make that part of the main. Not that it's part of the main game anyway, but I mean, a lot of those side quests is like that. When you go to that, I think it was Mars or something like that, and you pick up that mission from that weird
yeah.
guy who has all the papers and whatever. That was like part of his missions. and I
Yeah.
just wouldn't do it because
I'm
it's
I'm
boring as
I'm
shit.
gonna be honest. Like when this game was coming out, I envisioned myself playing like this badass space pirate. I wanted to go out and loot ships
Yep.
and create havoc. And it's like you can do that, but you're not gonna be able to beat the game doing that. You're not gonna
No.
really be able to play the game doing that because you're gonna piss off everybody that you're supposed to be doing quests for, or end up spending a buttload of in-game money to like remove your bounties or whatever. And then what's the point? I'm not this nefarious space pirate anymore. I'm still a star citizen. You know.
I did
Honestly,
like that one planet that was like it reminded me of Firefly. It was like the Western, like a space
yeah,
Western.
that was a neat planet.
Yeah, that was
Um,
pretty cool.
if you ever played Outer Worlds, that
I
game,
have, but
not Outer Worlds. It's Outer something. Outer Worlds is a different kind of game.
I would say I wasn't a big fan of Outer Worlds.
No, there's a game that came out like 3 or 4 years ago. It was similar to Starfield, but maybe a little more kind of a little more cartoony. I guess is a rough way to describe it, but it
Kind of
was a
sounds like
really
Outer Worlds.
maybe it is Outer Worlds.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was Outer Worlds.
it felt a little more like Fallout y, I guess,
Yeah, and it
to
was a
me.
little bit more. It was a little bit more space westerny.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty sure
Yep.
that's Outer Worlds. Yeah,
Yep. Okay. Yeah. That game was, I think, really good. I don't think it got very good reviews, but when you compare
I
that
didn't
with
like it,
Starfield,
but
you didn't like it?
no, I'm not really. It's just not
No.
my type of game. But I mean, I see what you're
I
saying. I mean, to me, I mean, it was. I mean, Outer Worlds is basically what I thought was like the dumbed down version of what Starfield was gonna be,
Yeah,
and that
but it turned
Starfield
out
was
it turned out
yeah,
Starfield's the dumbed down version of what Outer Worlds was,
pretty
which
much. Like
is
I thought,
sad.
I only played Outer Worlds a couple times. It was just not for me. But I thought that Starfield was gonna be that, but with everything better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I thought you were gonna have like actual like being able to control your ship on takeoff, not just being like a cutscene.
Yeah.
You know, things like
Man,
that.
that's the problem with that was the problem with Skull and Bones.
That's a huge problem. Well, okay, so I have little bit of a different take on that. Now, Skull and Bones was an okay game. I think that it was not a $70 game. It was
No,
a
it was definitely like a thirty
$38,
dollar game. Yeah.
yeah, $30 game at most. The problem with that is that I think everyone, because it's a Ubisoft game, I think everyone's expectations were this was going to be Black Flag, but just pirate ships. And it wasn't that. It was a ship battle simulator, basically,
Yeah.
which is okay, but I feel like they relied heavily on I don't think they made it very clear that that's what it was going to be.
Yeah, they were relying on the hype of the game to pull in revenue, which it worked for them. They made a lot of
Yeah,
money off of it with clearly minimal effort.
yeah.
Um,
It is disappointing though that they made a game like that and they still had the ability to have like a character creation. You're on these islands, you know, you're still running around. They had the individual character models, everything made, but you're not gonna put in like swords and muskets and shit like that. I feel like that's just a missed opportunity.
well, and I mean, so when I first heard of Skull and Bones, this was back when, like a year or two ago, when you and I were playing Sea of Thieves, and we're like, oh, a realistic version of Sea of Thieves, because Sea of Thieves
Yeah,
was really good, but it was a rough game. Like there was a
it
lot of
was. Yeah.
polishing that still needs to be done on that game, but part of its charm is its rough edges. This
Yeah,
was
well, I
supposed to
think that's the
be,
point, right? I mean, for
yeah,
that game, anyway.
yeah. This Skull and Bones, the way I thought about it back then was that it was going to be a more polished, more realistic, more grounded version where you are a pirate and you get to get on this ship with your pirate friends and go do pirate stuff. I never really played Black Flag. I've been hit and miss with a lot of the Assassin's Creed games, but that's what a lot of people told me was what their opinion was going to be, or what their opinion was, is that it was, Black Flag, but only the pirate part of it. And so it seems to me that this game should have been a sort of Sea of Thieves, Black Flag, Love Child, and it's really neither.
Well, so I played Black Flag over and over. I love Black Flag. It's my favorite Assassin's Creed video game. Um, the it's weird because the ships, the pirate part of Black Flag is a big part of the game, but it's not the biggest part. I mean, it's still an Assassin's
Mm-hmm.
Creed game, right? You're still
Yeah,
going to whatever cities and doing Assassin's Creed shit. It's almost like they took just the ship part of Black Flag, took that and then got rid of all the character like interactions and all the
yeah,
actual story, and they just like reskinned that almost.
yeah.
Now that's
Well, I mean,
not
even
100% fair because I mean they did spend a lot of time. I don't want to like discourage that. I mean they did a good job with it, but it's like Black Flag was such a good video game that they had that technology already to do that. They had that blueprint to do something similar and do something better than what Black Flag was. And Black Flag is a better game than Skull and Bones. And that's
yeah,
how old now?
at least
So
5 or 6 years, I think.
yeah, I mean, I think Black Flag. I saw a lot of hate about like how it wasn't a pretty game, whatever. I think Black Flag or Skull and Bones is a beautiful game. I think the water was done great. I think the graphic wise, I think it looked great. So
Yeah,
hopefully, they take that technology into whatever they do next.
yeah. I would
I
like
don't
to
know.
see. This is another one of those. I think the game is too far broken to like be fixed. I would like to see them make a sequel or a spiritual sequel, but that includes what gamers actually want out of a pirate game because like pirate games are fun. Being this
Yeah,
seafaring rogue that plays by his own rules, like that's a great video game concept.
yeah,
But people want to be the rogue. They want to be the
yeah,
pirate. They don't want to be the ship.
yeah.
Manning the
I
ship
agree.
is fun.
That
That's
should
what
be a
was
part of
fun.
it, like Black
Yeah,
Flag.
that's what I mean. That's what's fun with Sea of Thieves. It's like you sailed your ship. You didn't
Yeah,
control it with some joysticks. Like you had someone steering the ship and hoisting the sails and adjusting the sails and fixing the ship while you're in battles and firing the
yeah,
cannons. Like everyone had their place. I remember the most disappointed that I was with Skull and Bones was when you and I both got through the intro and we're like, all right, let's go on this ship. And we were both in two separate ships. I was like, well, I
yep,
wanted to be a pirate with my buddy.
yeah.
I
I
didn't
want to
want to
be
be two
on the ship
boats.
with my
Yeah,
friends. Like
I didn't
that's what
want
I
to
wanted.
be. I didn't want to be two ships sailing side by side. I want like here's my
Wait,
mate.
and I think the most frustrating part of that is that I'm not saying the advertising from like Ubisoft and whoever said anything differently, but they definitely didn't correct anybody. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I
Like
think
it,
I think it was misleading.
I definitely
I'll
think it
say
was
it.
misleading. Yeah, no, I mean I agree with you. It's just it's disappointing because we waited for that game for how long? I mean, it got delayed and delayed and delayed. I almost wonder if not maybe the first couple versions of the game was going to be a spiritual successor to Black Flag. Like it was going to
Yeah,
be more like that. You have all these character models that like why even have that if all you're going to be is the ship? Like I wonder if
yeah,
that was the original plan, and then they scrapped everything with whatever issues they had and they came out with this piece of shit,
yeah. I
more or
mean,
less.
like even when you're on these different islands, like those little settlements and stuff. There's only two main settlements. They're
Yeah,
pretty lame, and then
yep,
you got these little minor settlements, and it's like all of these dudes. They just give you like these little fetch quests, and that have no meaning at all. And the story, like the main campaign, is just another bunch of series of like fetch quests, maybe with a few go sink these ships peppered in there.
yeah,
Um, the actual fun part of the game has nothing to do with the quests at all. Like the
no,
fun part of the game is going out and finding these little bosses. I know you and I had a lot of fun, like smuggling drugs and booze and stuff.
yeah,
And that's not even really a part of the main purpose of the game.
no,
You know,
no.
and
It's yeah,
I think I told you that that first dude he ends up double crossing you at the end of his chain, and you're drinking buddies with him after it. I'm like, no, dude, I'm a pirate, right?
well, yeah.
I'm a
It doesn't
ruthless
even logically
pirate.
make sense. Like they
Yeah,
just
you should have just
threw.
you should have just shot that dude. Like
Yeah.
once you realize that he double crossed you and you
You're
go
a
into
pirate,
him,
for Christ's sake. Like, you should have
yeah,
killed him.
like yeah, you should have shot him. But instead you get this like scene where your character is deadpanned the whole time, just blank faced, like not showing any facial expression at all. They like the audible text like sort of alludes to you being a little peeved. But at the end of that scene you're drinking beer with him and it's like, nah.
Let me ask you a
Nah.
question, because that's another thing that pisses me off in video games. That when you are a specific character, whether you created your character or not, and your character does not have any audio, like he doesn't speak, and you're just like, I know they do that to, like, I guess have the audience like make up their own mind, like, what,
Yeah.
everyone has their own voice, but it irritates the shit out of me. I like either, like, when you have a character who has dialogue options,
Mm-hmm.
like what Starfield had, right? That had like
Yeah.
dialogue options. You could kind of choose your own how you want to play, or they just have a scripted whatever. I don't like the silence, because it takes me out of the experience. My
Yeah.
personal opinion, because then it's like you have all these characters like talking to you, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just saying, like, are you mute? Like, I don't understand. It just irritates the shit out of me.
I think some games have done it right. Like the Fable series, you don't really talk a whole lot. Um, but like it's I don't know, it still feels right. But there are definitely games
Yeah.
where it's like, man, my character could totally be saying something right now, and in fact,
Yep.
I've selected an option for him to speak,
Yeah.
and that whoever you're talking to just reacts to what you chose for him to say, and it's like, well, I and especially I think in Black Flag you get to choose your voice, and then you never talk. Your character doesn't say
You,
anything.
you mean Skull and Bones?
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you even pick like
You choose what your
yeah,
voice is going to sound like,
yeah, and then it's
and then
not
your
even
character
used.
never talks. Yeah,
No,
like
it's so dumb.
why did I pick that?
I feel like the more we talk about this, the more irritated I am
Yeah,
with the
I
state
don't.
of video games right now. And I guess maybe that's a good thing to jump into, because I did have a note here about just burnout in games lately,
Yeah.
and I think me and you have gone through this lately, specifically
Mm-hmm.
with we on Baldur's Gate, which is still a great game, but I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know if that's more of like video game ADD or just burnout. But
Mm-hmm.
we've had we played that Deep Rock Galactic, we've played Skull and Bones. We played that Hell Let Loose game, which maybe is a different story because that one's just really hard. But
Yeah, I'm not a fan, but
yeah, I mean, we've
it's that's more in your vein instead of mine.
yeah, definitely. But we've jumped from like game to game to get from Starfield. We tried it. I mean, is that like, are we just getting older and not, and we're just busier and looking for the next best thing, or is it like, is that like, say something about the video games as a whole? Like, are they burning players out? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, so I can speak to my perspective, and I think this part of the conversation is going to get a little bit more real. Uh, I think a lot of people, and I'm a part of that in our generation. Like we're working these long, hard work weeks for bosses that seem to not give a shit, and for jobs that don't appreciate what we do, right? And these video
Right.
games are supposed to be an escape from that. But
Yeah.
man, if depression ain't a bitch,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so I think it's a combination of game ADD. I think it's a combination of like getting depressed and just not feeling like jumping in to these escapism worlds. And I also think it's a part of the game industry as a whole, like we've already said, where they have sort of cracked the code on what makes them the most money with the least amount of effort.
Yeah.
And so we're being, fed these half baked games that are broken on release and maybe they get fixed months down the road.
I couldn't agree
Um,
more. Oh, well,
and
the biggest, I
so
mean, one we haven't even talked about that we've jumped into and jumped out pretty quick was Diablo 4.
yeah, that was a disappointment. So
Absolutely.
actually, I don't want to say that was a disappointment because that's a little misleading. We had a lot of fun playing that game.
We did.
We
Yeah, we did.
played we played the ever living shit out of that game. We beat the campaign. We did a bunch of the side quests. We looted a bunch of really cool gear. We made some cool characters. I think at some point we even like started over with new characters so we could you do different play styles. Um, but anyone that plays Diablo games knows that you don't really play Diablo until you beat it, because that's where the real fun starts. Is that end game content, and Diablo 4 had none of that. It just
Well, it seems like
go
everything lately doesn't have that like longevity aspect
yeah.
of the like nothing. Like when we were younger, and I know some people who are like that now, who like when they go to jump on the game, like they're still playing. Like our buddy Raider, he's still playing World of Warcraft, and
Yeah.
that's what they play all the time. I just don't have that. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
as a kid, like, okay, you're jumping on Call of Duty now. Like every night, everyone you knew was jumping on Call of Duty, and that's what you're
Hmm.
playing. I have nothing that like grabs my attention like that anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
And
that's an Xbox problem, if that maybe that's just a me problem. I don't know.
I think it's oversaturation. I think that's what it really is. I think it's a combination of our busy lifestyles,
Yeah,
the fact that we've got families to take care of, and so when we do get that little chance, that little window of time to jump into a video game, we go hard,
yeah,
um, and then I think that's what leads to the burnout. Is we went maybe a little too hard into some of these games. I
that's
think Baldur's
possible.
Gate
Yeah.
3 was a
A
prime
good example of that.
example
I can
where
see
like
that.
we
Yeah,
we went extremely hard into Baldur's Gate, just overturning every stone. Any free minute that we had, we were
was
playing
going
that
to
game
that.
together,
Yeah,
and I think that's sort of what burnt us out with that game. I mean, like I said, I got like 5 or 6 different playthroughs that I'm running simultaneously. I've done
yeah,
like the same thing 4 different ways in a single video game, and I haven't even beat it yet.
right.
So I think that's part of it is us like we're so hungry for these windows of escape that we can get to get past, and not that we're living bad lives. I love my family. Um,
Oh, absolutely.
Although I'm not particularly thrilled with the aspects of my current job, I do like being in the military. There's a lot of upsides to that, but there's a lot of downsides too, and life is
Yeah.
life.
Well, and I have to agree with a lot of that. I mean, I think for me particularly, like I have a great family life. I mean, I love my wife, love my kid. I mean, there's nothing. It's just about keeping the balance between that and work. And honestly, I do love my job. I think there's ups and downs to
Yep.
anybody's job. I have a pretty good position where I'm at. I mean, and that takes a lot of my time. That takes probably the bulk majority of my time, and then the rest of your time that you have, you only have so much energy, and so I spent
Yep.
most of that on my wife and kid, which is great, and I love that. That's the best part of my day, the best part of my week. And then when you go to sit down and actually do something for yourself, like you play something with your friends, like me and you jumping on a game,
Hmm.
I think you want it to be the best experience you can have because you only have so much time.
And
And
it's
I
not
mean,
all
this
the
goes
time.
well, no, and it goes back to like you're paying $70+ for a game, and for something to come out like Skull and Bones, it's like a $70 game, like and then
It's kind of a slap in the face, honestly.
so it's very disappointing. So I think it has
Like,
a lot to do with like it's more of the video games as a whole right now. Like
yeah,
Baldur's Gate was a different animal. I think you're
yeah,
right in the fact that we kind of burned ourselves out on that just because we were
yeah.
so excited for something to come out and really scratch that itch that we
And
haven't
it
had in a
did.
long time.
It
It definitely did, and I
did.
think we'll definitely go back to it. I think I
Yeah.
just need to break for a little bit, and I've always been like that. So it's not video games industry as a whole right now, but I think the biggest thing right now as an industry is that what do they call it, yeah, God, I'm trying to think, the games of service or whatever, like you have the
Yeah.
the Fallout style, you have the Maddens, the Call of Duties. It's like this it's saturated with these types of games that, in my opinion, is not what true like fans, at least our generation, want to play,
Yeah.
or don't want to sink their money into.
Yeah, when I'm spending that finite personal entertainment time, I'm expecting the person that I'm giving this hard-earned money to give me something that is worth my time.
Well,
You
worth
know?
the money and the time. I mean, you're
Yeah, I
not
mean,
only. I mean, time's valuable, especially people in our position where we do have, pretty good careers that we have to put a lot of time and energy to. Like I said before, we want to and need to be there for our families as well. So that takes a huge chunk of time, and I do think it's still important to take time for yourself.
yeah,
But when you do that and you're not getting out of that necessarily what you want or what you're putting into it, it's very disappointing. And I think a lot of
hmm,
that burnout comes from that, where it's like, where are those games that are worth our time and money?
yeah,
Where, like
and
I think a good example, and I don't want to like throw Xbox under the bus either, but like a good
throw it.
example of that is is, and I hate saying this because I'm always been an Xbox fan, but games like The Last of Us on PlayStation. I know you. I don't know.
Yeah,
Have you ever played that?
no,
That is
I watched the
probably
show.
that is probably the best video game series I've ever played. And it's
Yeah,
on PlayStation. I can't even play it
yeah,
on Xbox. I bought a
that's
PlayStation 4 just to play the remastered first game and the second game when it came out. And that's the only
yeah.
game I ever played on the PlayStation. That's
I
how
think
good that game
that's the
is.
only thing that's keeping PlayStation relevant is they're figuring out how to make these like really good games and then
And they're
making them
single player
PlayStation
games.
exclusives. Yeah.
That's a single player game and it's probably
Yep.
one of their most popular games. I
Hmm.
think Xbox needs to maybe go away from, yeah, and it's Microsoft. They don't need the. I mean, not that they don't need the money, but they have the resources to put into studios that are going to make these great single player games, these great experiences for people who really want that, and not just
Hmm.
keep throwing money at the Call of Duties and the Fallouts and shit like that. Like which is
Yeah, we
great.
don't.
There's an audience for that,
Yeah,
but I think there's also a massive audience for people who from our generation who don't have the great Halo game anymore, or don't have the great Gears of War, or the Splinter
yeah,
Cells, or the great Battlefield games, or anything like that. Like where, if you look at what's out on Xbox right now, what is the biggest thing that people are playing? It's the shitty new Call of Duty that isn't even Call of Duty anymore. It's just this battle royale bullshit.
yep,
Where's the great like staple video game? Where's the Halo? Where's the Gears of War? You haven't even seen a Splinter Cell since I think Blacklist came out, which was like 10 years ago. Where's
yeah.
Grand Theft? I mean, Grand Theft
The
Auto is
whole
a
Tom
great game.
Clancy franchise took a left turn.
Yeah, like okay, like the Division and Ghost Recon's a great game. I think they maybe screwed up Wildland or whatever. Was Wildlands the newest one?
I think Wildlands is the newest one. They also had what was it? I think it was like Extraction, which is basically Ghost Recon but with zombies.
I don't know what that is. I mean, they have Rainbow
It didn't do
Six.
well.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I was saying I don't know what that is. I mean, they have Rainbow Six, which is okay, but that's another game of service. That's like a competitive. You can't
Yeah,
just jump into that game now. Like there's these, these are all like 6 year olds, like just kicking everybody's ass and playing
yeah,
competitively. Like where Xbox needs something like that that's gonna really. And maybe I'm biased because I think we're all of that generation that grew up playing. Like I keep going back to like Halo and Gears of War and things like that, but that's what we grew up playing. That's why we got into this in
hmm,
to begin with. Like, where are those games? You
yeah.
know what
Well,
I
I mean,
mean?
they tried to revise Halo with that open world Halo. I forget what it's called, but I
Well,
played a
Jesus,
couple
they
hours of
did.
it and it was garbage.
Well, they did Halo 4, which was okay, but a disappointment. Halo 5 just kind of sucked, and then they made a huge deal about Halo. What was the news? Halo Infinity or something like that, or
Yeah,
Halo
Halo Infinity.
Infinite.
That's the open world one.
I think it was Halo, whatever the open world Halo. That's not even Halo's not open world. I'm sorry. I mean, it was a decent game for what it was, but
Yeah,
that's not Halo.
yeah. And honestly, like the last two, like actual storyline Halo games, the only thing that made them good was the lore that was revolved around it. The game itself
Yeah, no,
wasn't
I
great.
agree. No, I agree. I mean, I love the. I watched, man. When Halo, I think it was Halo 5 was coming out. The best time I had with that video game was listening to they had a podcast that
Hmm.
was leading up to the video game, and it was narrated by that Keegan Michael Key from Key and Peele. Do you
Yeah.
remember? Okay, and what's that guy's name? Oh man, I can't remember his name. He's a I think he's Pakistani. He's a stand-up comedian. He's been in all kinds of shit. I feel bad I'm forgetting his name, but he's a great actor. And he voiced in that one. There was a couple other people that you'd recognize
Hmm.
too, I think. And it was like the best podcast series I've ever listened to. It was all
Yeah.
like the Halo lore. He was like a reporter, and he was figuring out like what like Oni was up to, and the UNSC and all that shit. And it was great. And then Halo 5 came out, and it was like, they put all this time and money into the lead up to it, the lore. They have the TV series now that's on, was it like Showtime or something? And
Yeah, I heard it's garbage.
it's so bad, but man, I wish like HBO or Netflix would have got a hold of that, because I feel like it would have been a lot better. But it's like, you know how there's that trope about video games going to movies and how it's always bad? That's
Yeah.
like the perfect example of it right there. That's
Well,
why
they
it
they
doesn't
had
work.
a Halo movie out a couple years ago that was really good. I think it took place on Reach. I forget what the name of it was, but it follows like the trainees, and then it leads up
Wasn't that
into
like a
when
fan made thing?
I don't know. It was on
Yeah,
Netflix for a while.
yeah, it was called
I I don't know, but
well shit, I don't remember what that was called. That was pretty good. No, I know what you're talking about,
yeah,
because at the end Master Chief comes and they're like
yep.
getting away from, I think, was it Reach? They're all the trainees and
Yeah,
the
they were all on
ODST
Reach.
trooper.
It followed little
Yeah.
like these dudes weren't even they had gone through like the genetic process of becoming Spartans, but they were still in their training. And the Covenant attacks and is getting ready to clash the planet, and Master Chief comes through and basically saves who he can.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that was good. I remember watching it. I want to say that was like a fan made movie, but I
I
could be
know there
wrong.
was one. I don't know if that
It was
one
very
was.
low budget. I know that.
Yeah, it was,
And it was
but
still very good.
it was still real
That
good.
was better than the new series.
That's what I've been told.
I say bad talk. I feel bad talking about that, talking shit about it. But I enjoyed the first season of Halo. It's not great, and I could pick it apart. I still
I
enjoyed it just
I
because I
just
love Halo.
so I never watched it. I heard like episode 2 or 3, you see Master Chief's face, and
Yeah, no, he
then
has his helmet off like the whole season.
yeah, which is dumb. Like that's part of what made Master Chief cool is you don't know what he really looks like.
I have a little bit of
Um,
a different opinion on that. I think you cannot do a Halo show that is the main character being Master Chief without showing his face. I feel like that's. I understand coming from a video game perspective. That was part of the game and whatever. But I also don't think you can do it another way. I think it
I'm gonna
wouldn't work
I'm
another way.
gonna I'm gonna disagree with you. I'm gonna give you a real good example.
All right, go ahead.
Um,
You're gonna
the
say
the
Mandalorian.
hell yeah, and I know he
Yeah.
does reveal his face like towards the end of season 1, but had they not revealed his face, he would have been just as cool, if not cooler. So like I
Yeah,
think
but there's a story reason why the Mandalorian does not reveal his face. That's not exactly the same as John or Master Chief. It's not the same. And
well
I
he's
think
Master Chief is supposed to be a faceless hero. That's
but
um
they did that in the video game because then you're able to kind of put yourself in those shoes. But when you have a show where there's a main character, you're not playing that character. You're watching this character. It's a different scenario. So that's why I
I don't
think you
know.
have to have
I think we're gonna forever agree to disagree on that one.
that.
I think it's dumb. I was told that there's a lot of times where he's not even wearing his armor. Like at a certain point, his armor it
well,
gets
it
interfered by the rings somehow, and so he has to like go and find it or something like that. Um,
I don't remember
and
anything like that.
maybe that was in season 2. I don't know.
I have not seen season 2 yet. I will say that I have not seen season 2. The season 1, it is Man, it's hard because I did enjoy it, and I did enjoy them how they put Cortana into it, and it's
Yeah,
really the beginning, right? I
yeah,
think that's why I think they could do something along the lines of like if this is the beginning. You see John, you see the Master Chief, you see him like kind of become that Spartan 117,
yeah,
and then he just wears the helmet maybe through season 2, season 3, whatever it is. I could get behind that, but I don't know. Like I
yeah.
said, I think in the beginning, I think you have to see that person and how he becomes who he is.
I'd be like I said, I never actually saw the whole show. All I hear is people's complaints, and I agree with why people are complaining. And if it is like the first few episodes, he's like in training and doesn't even have his armor yet, cool. But I mean, once he gets his suit, like even if we want to do away with the mystery of not seeing his face, right? Or the coolness aspect of not being able to see his face, like there's very tactical reasons why somebody in combat isn't going to remove their helmet.
No, I agree with that. I think, but in combat, he is wearing his helmet in season 1 anyway. It's
Okay.
the parts where you don't see him is like when he's at the station or whatever in his room or what. It's like normal thing. Like he's not going to be wearing his armor while he's at the mess hall, or he's not going to be. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind
Well,
of. Like
he
it
went.
wouldn't make sense in a TV show. Like when you
He
see Master Chief in his armor, you're in space and you're fighting the whole time. That's the video game. When you're watching the movie and he's like interacting with Halsey or he's interacting with some other troops and you're just like at some random fucking whatever, you're not going to be. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to be wearing your armor the whole time, and I think that's why they made that decision.
his suit is supposed to be able to sustain him for like months at a time. He
Yeah,
doesn't. He doesn't need to eat. He doesn't need to go to the mess hall.
Jesus Christ.
So
I feel like you're just not going to get on my page with that one,
I really won't. I mean, there's
and that's fine.
his suit does all of these things for him, and like without his suit, I mean, yeah, he's got the biological enhancements and the DNA splicing and all of that stuff. Um, but like without his suit and or his helmet, he's just John. No one gives a fuck about John. We care about Spartan
Yeah, but
117.
you need that like when you have a show, you need that like emotional connection to somebody. You want to know who
Yeah,
John is, not just who the Master
yeah,
Chief is.
his emotional connection is with a hologram named Cortana. That's
Yeah,
that's the emotional connection. He's not supposed to be humanized. The only humanization of him is the fact that deep down inside he's got this unhealthy, creepy attraction to a hologram, and there's a reason behind that, right?
yeah,
Cortana is like a DNA digital copy of Dr. Halsey,
yeah.
who is the person who basically kidnapped,
Children.
programmed, and created the Spartans. Like she
Yeah.
is, in a sense, their mother.
We could talk about Halo for hours. I think.
Yeah,
I mean, we could
she's
go on and on.
essentially their mother. And Cortana, in all aspects other than she's not a living, breathing human being, is essentially Halsey's daughter. So like
Well,
this is like
which is another weird thing in the TV show where Halsey has a daughter, and she's like one of the main characters in the TV. She's like a captain or something, and like is it UNSC or
yeah,
I think
UNSC.
it's UNSC, and her dad is like this high ranking general and whatever. It's like a whole nother storyline, which is kind of strange. That's another thing that they at man. We could go on and on. Maybe we save Halo for another time. We're running out of time anyway. We're at like over an hour already.
Oh shit.
Um, Last thing I want to talk about, let's just get into it real quick, is books for reading. Now I know we've been talking about this separately. I have it right here. It's called Brandon Sanderson, The Way of Kings. Brandon Sanderson,
Mhm.
obviously being the author. Now I've heard about this. This is a book one of the Stormlight Archive. So anybody who's
Yeah.
actually watching on video, this is what it looks like.
Book 5 is coming out in a couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah, so I've missed out. Apparently, I mean, I've
Hmm.
read Game of Thrones, and I'm not a huge book reader. I'm trying to get into it more. I mean, my wife's really big into books, so a lot of our when we have that relaxation time, that's what we like to do, like to hang out and read. That's what we did on our honeymoon. Actually, it was really nice. We sat by the pool or on the beach, whatever, and
That's
read
weird.
books.
People normally do something else during their honeymoon.
I mean, we did that too, but maybe we'll save that for another topic. We do have a 2-year-old running around, so there's plenty of that. But this book series is great. I mean, I got to thank you. You're the one who kind of turned me on to it. And actually, I think you told Lauren about it when you were staying here for the wedding.
Yep.
It is fantastic so far. I believe I'm on chapter 6 or 7 right now, so I'm not super far into it. Yeah, I'm on chapter 6. I'm about ready to start chapter 6.
I will tell you,
it is fantastic.
So in our little group chat, I did post that meme about
like
the little short stories that are in between the chapters.
Did you just call a meme a meme?
Yeah, I did it for the lulz.
Jesus. Okay, go ahead.
I got one. But yeah, so those little short stories, pay attention to them.
I'm definitely reading them every time. I mean, I imagine it's. Well, I don't even have an idea of what it's leading up to. Obviously, a ton of people are dying at some point, and there's people like recording their deaths, like their words right before death for some reason, and people are taking samples of them sometimes. Like there was this. I can't remember what the last one was, but this guy I don't know. It's wild. There's a whole bunch of wild shit. Just for anybody who wants to get into it, if you like. Pretty high fantasy. So think Game of Thrones, if you've ever read that, but like a lot more fantasy aspects to it.
I think it's like if Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings kind of were a little,
but like more fantasy than even that, I think.
Yeah.
At least so far. Which is not a bad thing. I think they do it well, so don't take that as I'm saying it's a bad thing. They do it very well.
There's a lot of fantasy aspects, but at the same time, it's toned down. So so you don't have these wizards launching fireballs at each other and these giant fucking monsters and dragons just going crazy. You know that there's powerful magic in this world, and you touch on it throughout the book.
When it seems like the system for that is pretty well thought out.
Yeah.
I don't fully understand everything. Like, let me tell you a couple examples. Just so, like I said, I'm very new into it. I'm trying to get through it right now, and finding time for that along with video games and work. But obviously, it's not easy.
Those are big books too.
They're very. I mean, Jesus, look at this. Look at the size of this one. I mean, look at that. I'm on chapter 5, or I just went through chapter 5, and that's as far as I'm at. I mean,
if you do it on Audible, it's like 24 hours of reading or listening.
Jesus. So, I don't know what that. Let's see, 977 pages, I think, is what that is right there. So, I mean, that's a big book. So I have a couple questions for you, maybe, and don't no spoilers or anything. I'm just
I'll try to answer what I can without any spoilers.
Yeah.
But I really want to hear, and I don't know if you've gotten to the point where you've created theories, but eventually you're going to get to a point where you're going to think you know what's going on, and you're going to try and want to predict where it's going. And I want to hear those just because I want to hear how wrong you are.
Well, that's I mean, so far what I've put together is like the first chapter is about, and we've talked about this off the podcast, but so you have these 10 people who basically banded together, made some kind of pact, and they were given these like divine weapons, these shard swords or something like that. Something along those lines. Shards, whatever. They're basically
blades. There's shard blades and shard plates. You'll learn what that really is much further along.
And basically what happens, not that I'm going to give everything away, but basically these guys are fighting monsters, more or less, whatever. One of them dies, goes back to a hell-like place, whatever it's called, and the 9 other people basically fuck off and abandon this guy, and that's all you kind of know at the beginning, and it skips ahead like 4,500 years. And it starts following 3 different people, really. The first person is an assassin. I can't remember his name right off the bat, but that guy's...
it's like Seth something.
It's something weird.
It's Seth, like S-E-Z or Z-E-S or something like that.
Something like that,
he changes his name because, like, at first it's like
I can't remember.
Seth, like the sonless or fatherless or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But he goes through a lot of character development, and he
Okay.
changes his name a bunch of times. It's weird.
And he can use like this stormlight, whatever, which is pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot of like magic aspects to it, and he can like change, which is a whole nother thing with this spren and whatever. But he basically can like manipulate. I don't want to call it gravity, but almost manipulate. I don't know. How would you explain that? Like,
So, in this particular world, so for anyone that's interested in this series or has already dived into it, whether it's a little bit or a lot, this is a multiversal series. The Stormlight Archive takes place on, I believe it's called Toro, which is a single planet. Um, each planet usually has one or two gods governing it. And I'm not going to go too much further into that because we get into the world of spoilers. And each of these gods has like their own way of governing more or less reality on these planets. And so on Toril, it's done with Spren. So Spren are the reason everything happens. So when you use Stormlight, you are essentially manipulating Spren, almost like midichlorians in Star Wars, but kind of different.
so
So,
what I understand about the spren so far, like, so I was reading a part of it where they were like in battle and people were in a lot of pain and whatever, and you literally had these like pain spren that were like these
yep,
little orange, almost like spirits that were like
yep,
on the ground, like grabbing at the people,
yeah.
and it's strange. And then there's like a wind spren, which is very important apparently with the Kaladin storyline. From what I'm gathering, there's like a little wind spren that's like it's almost like a little spirit that's
Have
kind of
you
like
got her name yet?
talking to him. No, I don't think I got her name yet.
Okay,
Yeah, so that, like I said, I'm not very far on it, but like
yeah.
there's like this little wind spren that you can see like when there's big storms and stuff. That they're basically like these little spirits that are a representation, like a physical representation of like different elements and feelings and things like that. From what I understand, that's how I understand it anyway.
The spread are kind of a combination of a bunch of things. They are a sort of physical manifestation of thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, but they are also a physical manifestation of how the world works. So, and you'll this. This isn't a huge chapter. This is or a huge spoiler. It's just a little bit of like lore insight that you'll read in one of those in between book stories. But there's like this guy and his wife, and they study Spren, and they're trying to study like why Spren appear the way they appear, and like what they do, and what everything really means. And so he is studying fire Spren, and so he's trying to like measure the size of this fire Spren, and he sees that it's like a certain size, and then when he leaves the room, like and comes back, it's like a different size. And so he creates this little experiment where so he believes that the fire spren are like a certain size because every time he measures them they're this size. So he looks at the spren, he measures it, it's the same size that he thinks it is. He stays in the room but turns around so he doesn't look at it and has his wife measure it, and it's a different size. When he leaves the room, its size changes because yes, the spren is like an embodiment of like fire, but its substance is based off of perception. So because
Yeah.
when he's closer to it, it appears the way that he believes it should appear. Whereas when he leaves, it appears more like how his wife thinks it would appear.
Well, and I kind of got from the Kaladin chapter so far when he's like when he becomes a slave and all that, and he's in the like there's like a wagon they're going to that big like encampment. Um, he sees this wind spren, but no, like so it basically explains that like people don't always see what you're seeing, more or less.
So you're gonna, I mean, this wind sprint is extremely special. I don't want to, once again, I don't want to go more into detail. There is a reason why he's the only one seeing this wind sprint.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
And it's not, I think it's pretty obvious. This is not like just a normal wind sprint.
Well, yeah, it's not a normal. I definitely think there's a huge like plot point to this. So maybe
Yeah.
it's not even a sprint. I don't know yet, but they do mention that like when like not everyone sees the same sprint. I guess like he mentions that at some point. I think.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know. Anyway,
I mean, like even to the people living on this planet, sprint are kind of a mystery because they're kind of hard to pin down. You know, they're they're essentially spirits, but they're also manifestations of nature.
yeah,
So they are very mystical and mythical and elusive. Like they don't just like appear because you want them to appear. They appear because there's a reason for them to appear.
right,
So they don't appear unless there is a very specific situation in which it like calls them out.
right.
um, and yeah,
Well, and there's this other chapter that follows this other character. I can't remember what her name it was, like Shalyn or something, or
Shalon.
Okay. So it follows her. She seems to be some kind of she's light eyes, right?
Yes.
And she's
Oh
trying to
yeah.
be.
So for anyone that hasn't gotten into this book, fair
I guess
warning.
that's a good
Yeah,
point to.
there is a class system that is based off of eye color instead of skin color, and it is explained throughout the book why it is that way. And I think the writer does a good job at drawing parallels on how like racial discrimination is done in the real world and showing how it's done in this book. Kaladin, who you've already talked about, is a dark eyes, so he is of a lower. They call it a lower dan, um, and so he deals with essentially being considered a second class citizen, and some of the problems that go along with that are kind of why he finds himself becoming a slave. Not all
Yeah.
dark eyes are slaves, but you will almost never see there's very rare situations in which you will ever see a light eyes enslaved because it's like they are better than that.
Holier than thou, right?
Yeah.
But so
So
this other
if like
girl,
yeah, if I just want to say like if racial discrimination is something that isn't something you want to deal with within literature, uh,
don't read
then
this
I
one.
would well I wouldn't say don't read it, but give it a chance to explain itself,
Yeah,
because I think it does a good job of I don't know not being offensive. It's hard for me to describe. I think for people that suffer discriminatory issues, this could be actually be a good book to read, because you see a lot of these people coming from these um, very lower walks of life and overcoming a lot of the prejudices, and it does a good job at uh, really explaining the hardships that people would go through when living through a life when you're discriminated against.
yeah. But anyway, there's this other character that it follows, and she's basically becoming like I think they call it a ward. Basically, it's like an
Yep.
apprentice type deal for this soulcaster, right? Is that
Yes.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And she can basically manipulate. At least the chapter I just saw, she basically turned a giant like monolith boulder type deal to smoke, so she can like
Yep.
manipulate objects, and she has like this thing on her hand. It's all these like different gems that I'm assuming can like, kind of give her these abilities. I don't really know.
Yeah. You're gonna. You're
Um,
gonna. You're gonna really be surprised when you realize what's really going on there. It's crazy.
well, yeah, I can't wait for that because I feel like I'm not going to like this lady. And the girl who's the Shalon, is that her name?
Hmm.
She's like apparently trying to steal this from this lady.
Yeah.
At least that was the original plan that she made with her brothers, I believe. So I
Yep.
don't know. I'm just getting into it. It's a really good story so far. It's really got me hooked. I'm only five. I mean, that doesn't happen with books very often. It takes a lot for me to get really like hooked, and it's definitely got me. So I can't wait to get in deeper and talk about it more with you because I know you've read it and
Yeah.
have done a lot of I'm sure you've watched videos and explanations. Also, you kind of know a lot about the lore and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
that'll be exciting to get into. All right. Well, we've gone almost an hour and a half, almost more than 40 minutes past where I said we'd cut it off. But if you've stuck with us this far, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I may cut some of it out. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what I have time for. But I mean, that's it for episode 1 of our 3 p.m. podcast.
Are we going to number these episodes?
I'm just going to keep track of how many we've done. So episode 1, I guess.
Yeah.
Plans for the future, real quick. Just we're going to try to meet maybe bi-weekly. We'll set that goal. If we can release one weekly, great. But I think our goal is to do maybe bi-weekly, just because we're busy people. When every other week we'll get one out, and gives me some time to edit and whatnot. I think we just plan on just keeping it kind of chill, relaxed, bullshitting about whatever comes to mind. As you can see, we've gone off on several different tangents. So if that's not for you, I don't know what to tell you. But anything that's in the news for video games, we'll probably try to touch on a little bit. We're not a news professional by any means, so we're not going to go heavy into it. But if it's something we're interested in, maybe we'll bring it up. And anybody who's listened to the Ahsoka series will probably try to do something similar to that. If there's any other shows we want to do a deep dive in, we'll probably keep it a lot shorter than those ones were. Those were, I think 1.5 to 2 hours long at some points. So we'll keep it a lot shorter. But I know there's
I think it depends on the show, right? Like,
yeah,
Ahsoka kind of had a lot to unpack, or at least a lot for us to praise and bitch about.
Yeah. We're big Star Wars fans, so there's that. But we'll try to keep them coming. If you could check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, it's all at Pixels, Plots, and Parenting, or 3PN. Our email address is pixelsplotsandparenting@gmail.com. So hit us up with any feedback, anything you'd think we'd be interested in, any comments. If you agreed or disagreed with us on some of our opinions, maybe give us a shot. We'll bring it up in the next episode.
Maybe we're just dumb.
Yeah, maybe. It's very possible. So for 3PN, I'm Jake.
And I'm Shane. I will say just a last little tidbit. If you're trying to look up some of our stuff on these different platforms, I think it was, I don't remember if it was Facebook or YouTube. There is a 3PN that is not us. So I guess it can be a bitch to type out, but if you really want to make sure you're looking at our stuff, type out Pixels, Plots, and Parenting. Or if you do look up the 3PN, our icon is that little like game controller, black and white game controller thing.
Yeah.
So if you see that, that's us. If you look up 3PN and you don't see that, someone else out.
Definitely not us.
Definitely not.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for sticking with us.
Yep. See you later.
We'll see you next time.